welcome back to Am's Untitled Podcast. I'm Am. Hi, if you've never met me before, it's really nice to meet you. Welcome to my Percy Jackson dedicated podcast. It has been a while. I am so sorry. I did not realise when I went back to uni how difficult it was going to be to try and manage my time. I did not realise how much work would be going into this year and how much downtime I would actually not get. Like, I like to save this as my fun point in the week where it's something that I look forward to and something that I like to spend time on and give my 100% in. I was exhausted. The last 3 months have been intense. Like, intense like I've never experienced before. I've never felt like I've been under this academic pressure in a long time. So I'm so sorry there wasn't an upload. I was working, I went to uni, and I just didn't feel like I had any free time to myself at all. It drove me insane. I'd never felt that kind of pressure in my life before. I was exhausted and I fell quite ill towards the beginning of this year because I was just tired and obviously I hadn't recovered as of yet. I took Christmas off because I thought, you know what, before I come back, I want to be 100% in it and I want to get back to my weekly uploads and not feel like I'm not giving this enough time because I did have a stage of that when I was like, oh, I'm not getting enough time to do this. Like maybe it's time that I maybe didn't do it anymore, and I was like, no, but this is something I really care about. Like why would I give this up? Like this is an aspect of my life I don't want to give up. So I'm back and it feels so good to be back. I'm sat, the window is open. I have a massive window in my room that I'm looking out of whilst I'm doing this, and I'm just so excited. Since I've been back, we've had so much season 2 content, and I'm so excited to just talk about it because I would rather share it with people that understand as opposed to maybe people that don't get the hype as much. If you are a fan of the show and have just started watching the show and have never read the books, I know my best friend has just started watching the show and I've just about got him to read the first book and he is loving it. So I understand that there's a whole new fan base now because of the show, and I'm so grateful for that. So, in today's episode, we are going to be talking about the first episode in the show. I know I'm so behind. I've seen other people who are already like reviewing episode 6, so I'm fully aware that I am so behind. But this also means that I can talk freely because most people have already seen it, unless you're doing what I did like the year before, which was wait till all the episodes are out and then binge it in one day. High amount of respect for the people that do that as well. That's insane. But I couldn't help myself this time. I was too excited. I've been waiting 2 years for this. Like, I was like, I'm just going to watch it as it comes and take it as it comes. So, in today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the first episode, which is I Play Dodgeball with Cannibals. Can I just say, just before I start talking about the episode itself, this season has a completely different vibe. I don't know what it is. Like, you know how when we read the books for the first time, at least when I did, like things didn't feel like they were that serious until book 3. In the show, everything feels serious from now. Like when I was watching the first episode, like I actually felt like the pressure that they were under. And I don't think I've felt that before. Maybe as I'm older and I've realized like the circumstances that these guys are in are so terrifying and their whole world depends on this. Maybe it's kind of opened my eyes a little bit more. But when I was watching this season, it feels a lot more adult. It feels a lot more mature. And I love that. Walker, Ari, and Leah, they look so grown up. Like when I saw Walker on the screen again for the first time in so long, I was like, my God, this kid has grown. Like he does not look like the baby we saw in season 1 anymore. And it's amazing. And his entire growth throughout this season has been intense. Like I just feel old watching the show because I'm like, oh my God. I was like, they're all younger than me. So I was thinking, I was like, they're all younger than me. But they're doing such a great job and they're doing so well for themselves. And I'm so proud of them. Anyway, I've been nearly waffling for 5 minutes and I haven't even started on the episode yet. So this is going to be a long episode. So please stick with me till the end. I promise I'll make it worth it. Right, let's do it. So, the beginning of the episode opens up on a beach, which I thought was a bit different because obviously that's not really how the first book starts. But then you have to remember that obviously the books are solely told from Percy's perspective. So obviously we don't get much of an insight into what other characters are doing during that time. So I'm glad like the show has given us an opportunity to just um see things from other people's lenses in the show, which is quite cool. And Grover is on the island searching for Pan. Obviously, he's on his solo quest, which is very fun. And he asks Pan for a sign and finds a pipe on a skeleton satyr's hand, which was quite like I don't know, it was a bit shocking because I was just like, I just realized like so many satyrs have died doing this quest, and obviously, like Grover's my boy, like I don't want anything to happen to him, and like the thought of him going on such a dangerous quest like alone was quite. It didn't sit with me. It doesn't sit right with me, but yeah. It was so nice to see Arian's Grover legs back on screen. That was so cool. I actually forgot for a second that he's supposed to be part goat, and I was like, oh my god! I was like, yeah, he's got the goat legs, which are so cool. And a girl is watching him through the bushes, who I didn't recognize at first because I'm a massive idiot and I forgot that they've added new characters in this season, right? So I was thinking, who is watching him? Like, honestly, I don't know who that is. And obviously, she comes to the surface, and it is Alison Sims, who is a new original character that the show has added in. If any of you don't know, she is also a demigod from Camp Half Blood, but she's graduated from there. So she's a lot older than all the other demigods, and she's already had her time at Camp Half Blood. But she has joined the rebellion. She has joined Luke's side for whatever reason. We don't know. She's a daughter of Apollo as well. I forgot to mention that. It doesn't get mentioned until episode 3, but I'm just going to tell you guys from now because like it's quite obvious. Um, anyway, uh, Grover realizes that obviously Allison is a part of Luke's rebellion, and he runs away from her. It turns out they're also looking for the golden fleece as well. So the golden fleece is obviously not what Grover's looking for, but he finds a strand of it basically, and that's where they detect that he knows where the golden fleece is. And the shot basically cuts off with him being grabbed by a giant tentacle and pulled into the water, and that's when the screen goes blank. So it was just like a great episode just from the first scene. Like, I hadn't seen anything of Percy, I hadn't seen anything of Annabeth, but I'd already knew that it was going to be a great episode because of the way they opened, and it was so great. Like, honestly, I was so excited. Like, this was the moment where I realized that we are so back because I've been waiting for this for so long, and it did not disappoint at all. Okay, so then obviously we get back to Percy's perspective, and it opens up with Percy face planting the floor of his bedroom. And you know what I thought was so weird, but also really like almost cruel what they did was like if you look closely at Walker's leg, there's the bed sheet that's tangled around his leg the same way that the giant tentacle grabbed Grover, which I thought was such a weird like and scary foreshadowing, I suppose. And the bit another bit that made me laugh as part of that scene is there's also a car song playing in the background, and I remember in an interview Walker saying that he listened to the Cars soundtrack throughout the season 2 filming. So I was like, that's so funny. I bet they put that in. I bet that it was his suggestion to put that into the show, which was so funny. Um, and as he stands up, he's giving this monologue where he's telling us about the fact that he hasn't seen his friends all summer, and it's actually quite sad. Like, they don't really get to communicate apart from like iris messages, and even then they have to have like the drachmas to pay for that. So the only way they can communicate is like the old school way, which is through letters and things. And obviously, like a cheeky little thing that I noticed was that he has a picture of Annabeth and Grover on his mirror, and his smile looking at Annabeth's picture was like peak Percabeth. I was like, oh my god, they are so cute. And he's just staring at her. He's just the king of yearning, isn't he, really? Like, oh, you know what? We got so much Percabeth content that I could talk about in this season. And it's like, it makes me excited for future seasons when things get a little bit more developed. But yeah, I just thought that little moment was quite cute. Like, instead of it, obviously, in the book, he has a picture of her in his notebook. But obviously, this time he has a picture of her on his mirror, which I think is quite cute. If any of you guys don't know, actually, I don't know if I've ever talked about this being on the podcast, but on my mirror, like, I have I have little like I don't know what they call them, but they're like cut out pictures of animated Percy. So I've got one that says look, I don't want to be a half blood, which was like the first line in the first book. I've got a few pictures of Percy, and then I've got the seven demigods from Heroes of Olympus on my mirror as well, which I think is quite cute. Um, yeah, so I was just like the way he has a picture of Annabeth, I was like, that's really funny because I have a picture of Percy on my mirror as well, which is quite cute. Um, and as he's walking through this hallway into him and Sally's house, he stumbles upon a compass that was created by Tyson, which obviously talk like is a subtle sort of foreshadowing as to what Tyson's special skills are, which we'll talk more about that as we get there. Um, and the show sort of tells us that Sally's adopted Tyson from a homeless shelter, which is so cute. Like I love Sally so much. Like we didn't get to see much of Sally last season because obviously like she was kidnapped and then we saw like a little glimpse of her towards the end of the episodes. But I'm glad that she got a little bit of screen time at the beginning of this as well because I love Sally as a character. I think she is such a lovely mum, and she has made Percy who he is today, which I love so much about him. Like part of the reason why we love Percy isn't because he's just a demigod and he's like a hero or whatever. We love that he's got this beautiful human side to him as well, which I really appreciate. That she was able to nurture that while keeping him away from this world. And even though he's now gone into this crazy world now, like he hasn't lost his heart and soul or like the center of who he is, which I love. Anyway, I always go on a bit of a tangent when I'm talking about this. This isn't anything that's said in the show. This is just my personal opinion. And it shows some sort of flashbacks of the struggles Tyson had, like fitting into Percy's school, because he's so different. And what I love about this is like in the books, Percy doesn't find out that Tyson is a Cyclops until much later on in the story. I think it's the first few chapters when he finds out that Tyson's a Cyclops. And I love, like, from the beginning of the show, they show Daniel as a Cyclops, which I think is so cute. He's so adorable. He just looks like he needs a hug. Like, I'm not a very, like, touchy feely affectionate person, but honestly whenever I see Tyson on screen I'm like, you know what, I need to give him a hug because he is so cute. And Daniel Deemer is just, honestly, he is such a brilliant addition to this season. Like he's got so much heart and so much soul, and like this sweetness and innocence that he plays Tyson with is just, oh, chef's kiss. Like I could not think that there was a better Tyson out there. And I know like Daniel was a lot older, and obviously there was a little bit of a worry that he was so much older than Walker and the rest of the cast, but he plays this character so well. And honestly, when I see him on screen, I could not think of anyone better. So Daniel, if you're listening to this, you were absolutely incredible throughout this season. From what I've seen of this season anyway, I've seen all the way up to episode 6. I'm there every day, 9 a.m. in the morning, ready to watch a new episode on a Wednesday. So I'm really proud to see Daniel on that screen, and I hope we get to see more of Tyson through future seasons, but I guess we'll find out soon enough. Sally is insisting on sending Tyson to obviously Camp Half Blood because although he's a monster, she feels like at least he'll be accepted there and he'll be looked after there, if you know what I mean, which I think is quite sweet of her. And I love that there's no differentiation between the way that she treats Percy and the way that she treats Tyson. She treats them both like sons, and she shows them so much respect. And even though Tyson may be a little bit different, like she never makes him feel like the odd one out, which I love so much about her. And it actually makes my respect for her grow as well. Like she was brought into this crazy world as well. And she's handled it so well with like the utmost grace. um, and yeah, she's just such an incredible mum. I think everybody wants a mum like that. And I remember even speaking to my best friend who's currently reading the books. He was like, his mum is probably like one of the best parts of the series. I was like, 100%. I was like, she's brilliant. And she just gets more and more cool and more badass as the books go on. Um, she reveals to Percy that she had a dream about a golden drachma spinning in a void, a trident on one side and a scythe on the other, foreshadowing that Percy and Luke are both two sides of the same coin. And, you know, Percy represents the good in like the demigod world, the people who are heroes and, who want to do the right thing and make their parents proud. But obviously Luke sort of represents the more negative side, understanding, like hating the gods, really, not understanding them, not wanting to be their children, and fighting for what he believes is a better world. But he actually understand Luke a lot more now as an adult. When I first read these books, I could not get on board with the people who felt sorry for Luke. I was just like, what is this? Like, he has betrayed all of his friends. He's hurt the people that are closest to him. He's disappointed his dad. Like, he left his mom in a vulnerable position. Like, I couldn't get on board with the people who sympathized with Luke. And now, as I'm a lot older, I've come to understand that actually Luke has a valid point to hate the gods. Like, they've never done anything for him. Hermes put his mother in an awful position. He abandoned them when they were young, and poor Luke had so much resting on his young shoulders. And I can see why he'd been led astray from that. If somebody is offering you, like Kronos offered Luke a better life, a golden age where, heroes and demigods, like they lived together and there were none of these godly parents who expected things from him. So I understand the Luke side a little bit more, and I think his arc throughout these 5 books is such an incredible arc, and I think they've done so well with putting that arc into the show. And I thought that dream coming to Sally, which is a new thing that has been added in by the show, I thought that was such a cool concept. I was like, I'm glad she is involved more in the story, not just like the human side of the story, but also the demigod side of it. And obviously, Percy knows that this dream has a direct link to Kronos, basically. And, I hope that we see a little bit more of that in the next few episodes. And she says this quote, and the reason why I've written this quote down is because it's such a beautiful quote and it's so beautifully written. And it is, being a real hero means standing up for others. And, this woman is just fully wisdom. Like, when she talks, like, you can tell, like, she knows what she's talking about. And this thing where it's like people think that being a hero is like slaying monsters and, being the best swordsman and whatever. But actually, being a hero is the core of looking after people and standing up for people who are facing injustice. And I love that she instills that teaching not only into Percy, but into Tyson as well. And that quote gets brought up in episodes to come, but we will talk about that when we get there. Anyway, so that kind of sets up the whole scene with Sally, Tyson, and Percy and shows up their dynamic. Right, let's move on to the next part of the story. Okay, let's move on to the next set of scenes. So in scene 3, it's Percy and Tyson walking to school, basically. So they're just kind of on the streets, and Percy accidentally calls Tyson a monster. Now I felt so bad that he said that, and I know Percy obviously didn't mean it in a malicious way, but it's just like when you look at Tyson, he's so sweet and adorable, and the way he speaks, he's like a gentle giant. So the thought of someone calling him a monster, even though by mythological terms that probably is what he is, I feel like Tyson has the biggest heart in the show, and I think that gets shown more and more as the episodes go on. But I can understand, like, Percy is finding this really difficult. Like, obviously, this is the first time since Gabe has been gone that, like, he gets like his mom solely to himself, and now all of a sudden this new guy has come in, someone who his mom's adopted off the street. Like, I can understand why he feels like a teeny twinge of jealousy, and I feel like anybody does. Like, when we all have siblings, right? We know what it feels like when all of a sudden they get all the attention, especially as an oldest sibling. Like, I can understand that it can be a bit like, oh, like the younger one can sort of do no wrong, and I understand why Percy sort of feels that way. And, one thing that I thought was quite interesting in the show that they've brought up, that they've changed, which I didn't expect them to change, was that Tyson mentions to Percy that his mom is a naiad. And you know what? The whole time I had to pause the episode and I was thinking about this. I was like, how could he possibly know that? You know, like, he, according to Percy, like, Percy never knew any of his family, so it's like, where has he got this piece of information from? I mean, she might well be a naiad, but like, how does he know that? Which is something that doesn't get revealed straight away, because the Grey Sisters taxi shows up at the pavement and Tyson picks Percy up, which is so funny. Do you know what? That was the perfect comedic moment. Like, because I talked a lot about this, like, when I was reading the books, which was like, Rick always finds a way to put comedy in the most serious of scenes. And this felt like this was one of them. Like, I could tell this was probably Rick's idea as one of the writers on the show. Like, I bet he was, yeah, let's just add a scene where Tyson picks Percy up off the pavement. And obviously, like, the way Daniel picks Walker up as well, it's like, like lifting up a feather. Like, he just picked him up and put him over his shoulders. And it was so funny. I was like, honestly, laughing my head off watching the episode. I was like, that was so good. And I don't know who came up with that idea, but whoever you are, that was an incredible piece of writing to put in the show. Um, and Annabeth says the line, put him down, basically. So obviously, people who have read the books know that Annabeth isn't the most comfortable around Cyclopses. Because of something that's happened in the past. If you don't know, I'm sorry. I don't want to spoil it for you, so I'm gonna try and like dodge my way around saying it. Um, Tyson recognizes her, obviously, and he outs the fact that Percy stares at her picture all the time. And do you know what? The dumb smile I had on my face when he said that. I was like, yes, Tyson. I was like, Tyson is a shipper like us. He wants them to be together as much as we want them to be together. And like Percy's side eye is like bomb-tastic. Like the way he looks at him, he's like, Tyson, be quiet, stop talking, you're embarrassing me, which I just thought was so cute. So like that's the level of simpy a man should be. Like, feel free to disagree with me, but if he's not looking at your picture and staring at it in his free time, does he even love you? Is all I'm trying to say. That was a joke, by the way. Please don't take that seriously. um, and just the way, what? I feel like I could see a lot of Walker and Daniel's chemistry in this scene because like the way they were just exchanging looks, like they actually behave like brothers, which I think is so sweet. And again, it comes back to like the amazing bond that the entire cast has together, which we see in interviews, like on the press tour. I've been watching a lot of interviews lately just to sort of gain an insight for when I'm obviously doing the podcast episode, but this was really good. It was really fun. And the scene sort of ends up with Annabeth asking Percy if he had a dream about camp, but then he also mentions to Annabeth that he's actually had a dream about Grover, and that's where the scene cuts off. Now, this scene might be one of my favorite scenes in this first episode, is because it's inside the Grey Sisters taxi. And Annabeth is talking about the fact that she tried to iris message Chiron after she had this horrible dream about camp being on fire and in danger, basically. And the Grey Sisters, oh my god, they were so good. Like, the three of them were just like perfect casting. They just played their roles so well. Um, and they ask Annabeth if Percy is her boyfriend. And they also say that she's been dreaming about him as well, which is so funny. The smile on my face when I heard them say that, like, honestly, I think my jaw was hurting from smiling so much because it was just like um that entire scene was just perfect. And I actually did think, like, I know a few people might have been a bit disappointed that they cut the bit where obviously Percy and Tyson are at school and they get attacked by, but I'm glad that they didn't do that this time round. I feel like this was the right way to do it because it moves the story on a bit faster, which I like actually. And one of the Grey sisters asks if Grover is Annabeth's other boyfriend, and obviously she says no. But Percy looks so jealous. He was like, "What? There's another boyfriend? Like there's someone apart from me?" And it was just, what, that look that he gave her was just, yeah, they're just the perfect like Percy and Annabeth. Like I don't know what else to say about them. Like they play this so seamlessly. Like, yeah. I don't know. So sometimes I actually feel like Walker did fall out the books. Like even when he talks in interviews and stuff, like he's so Percy coded. It's insane. Like I see a lot of comments where people are like, "We don't know if Walker is playing Percy or if Percy is playing Walker," and I don't 100% see that with him. Like he's such a good Percy. Like I don't think they could have picked anyone better than him for this. And you know what? He was so jealous. And I like in my head I was thinking, chill, bro. Like you guys are not even dating. Like even if she is talking to someone else, like that's none of your business. Like you guys haven't seen each other in over a year. So yeah, it was just a great scene. It's probably one of my favorite scenes in this first episode as well. Also, there's a bit, I don't know if anybody else noticed this in the taxi, but there's a bit where obviously the cab sort of zooms off and Tyson is like, I think he's getting a bit motion sick. So he has like this hat over his head and he's pulled this hat over his head and he's like breathing into the hat and you can see the hat like moving as he is breathing. And I don't know if that was an improvisation or if that's like actually written in the script, but it was so funny. Like, it cracked me up. I had to like rewind the scene to make sure that I was actually seeing what I was seeing and not like imagining it. But yeah, Daniel is so perfect as Tyson. I feel like that was such a Tyson thing to do. The other Grey sister mentions that there's a tall man in Annabeth's dream. Now, what I was thinking when she said this was the first person that came to mind was Luke. Because obviously, like, Luke is tall, dark hair, and I was thinking that maybe she's dreaming about him, like, being on the Princess Andromeda or, like, plotting against the gods. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it was Luke that she was dreaming of. She still loves Luke. Like, I hate to be that person, but she 100% still does. And like, doesn't matter that he's betrayed her. I feel like she still has hope for him. And maybe, well, it definitely does cause a lot of problems between Percy and Annabeth, but we'll talk more about that as we get there. And then, the Grey Sisters are talking and they sort of mention Grover, and Percy, like, he demands to know where Grover is. Like, he knows Grover's in danger, but he doesn't know how to find him or where he could be. And they give him the coordinates 30, 31, 75, 12. Now, remember those numbers because they are very important. And the sort of end thing that I'm going to say over here is, like, you know what? One of the Grey Sisters, like, she takes the eye, I think it's away from anger, or is it Tempest? And she puts it like in her eye and she goes, "Oh yeah, Percy is cute." And I was just like, "Oh, that's so funny." I was like, everybody has a crush on Percy. It's so funny. Okay, so that's what all I'm gonna say about that scene. But that scene is probably one of my favorites in the show. Right, so this next scene opens up with them obviously outside of camp, and the Grey Sisters drop them off. And camp actually seems fine. Like, it doesn't seem anything like Annabeth was dreaming. So even she's a bit like, okay, like, what's going on? Like, demigod dreams don't normally lie, so maybe there's something yet to come. We never know. And Tyson is like, oh my god, like, this is hero camp, like, this is where I wanted to come, and he's so excited about that. I'm like, oh. And Annabeth sort of walks off and Percy chases after her, which is so adorable. I think it becomes quite obvious in the show that Annabeth has an issue with Tyson. Um, and obviously, like, unless you're a book reader, you're not gonna know why she has that issue with him. And it's not like necessarily directed as Tyson as a person, which a lot of people who are newly watching the show might think that that's the reason for it, but it's not. But yeah, we'll talk more about that when we get there. I think it's in episode 4 in the show where they talk a bit more about it. I'm pretty sure it's episode 4, but yeah, we'll talk more about that like as we get there. I don't want to like rush ahead of things just yet. Percy finds out that Annabeth has tried the stuff that he told him about. So I don't know if you guys remember last season. Percy and Annabeth, when they just before they go into the Tunnel of Love, they're talking like the fact that Annabeth's never watched a movie or been to like a theme park or anything. So she said that obviously when she went back to live with her dad, she went to try those things. Um, and also the bit that killed me was the bit where they were talking about the fact that they've been sending each other letters to communicate because obviously they didn't have the drachmas to iris message, so that's been their only form of communication at the minute. But I think that's so cute, like them writing letters to each other. For some reason, that just like touches my shipping heart in a weird way. I don't know if that bothers anyone else, but for me, it was just like, ah. Maybe it's the fact that I just think they're cute in general, so whatever they do is just cute to me. Okay, right. What else are we gonna mention about this? Um, and Annabeth is you can tell like she's a bit off with Percy. Like there's a little bit of awkwardness there between the two of them. And she sort of says, "Oh, you forgot to mention something." So basically, she's inferring about Tyson. And you can tell like their relationship has changed a lot from the first season. Like they grew really, really close, and now all of a sudden they've had this time away from each other, and they've both sort of grown, but they've kind of grown apart. So you can kind of see, like, particularly in the first 2 episodes, they're a bit like backwards and forwards. Like they're not who they used to be, which is understandable because obviously as people grow up and they spend time away from each other, yes, they grow as individuals, but also like sometimes they struggle to see eye to eye with each other, which I think happens a lot this season. But we'll talk more about their sort of dynamics and the sort of fights that they have closer towards the time. Uh, and Percy obviously changes the subject because that's what he's good at, deflecting issues. And he asks her about her experiences, like if she enjoyed like Space Mountain, if she enjoyed watching movies. And Annabeth is just very quiet, which I thought was like weird for her. It's almost like she doesn't want to lie to Percy. Like you can tell, like she hasn't enjoyed any of these things, but she doesn't want to tell him because she doesn't want to upset him, which I appreciate, but also at the same time, like it makes things difficult because you can tell she's not being honest with him, which is quite sad actually. And it breaks my heart because they're so meant to be in each other's lives. Like it's almost sad that they're not getting along at the minute. And there's a particular dialogue that Percy says here, and the way Walker looks at her, oh my god, I was just like, ah, like you could just see it in his eyes, like he wants to know more about her, and he says, because I did read your letters, and honestly, I felt like you left some stuff out too. He knows her so well, like he's trying to reach out to her, but she's sort of guarded again, like she's got these walls up again, the walls that he thought he originally broke down, she sort of put them back up again, and he can see that. And I just appreciate that he never wants her to feel like she can't tell him anything, or that she can't talk to him about certain things. But obviously the moment is short-lived because their moment, we'll call it a moment, gets interrupted by fireballs being thrown at them, of course. And on a side note, like the hair and makeup on the Laestrygonians, I want to say that's how I pronounce it. It's probably wrong. I've heard loads of people pronounce it in different ways, so I'm just gonna say Laestrygonians. And if I'm wrong, please don't savage me in the comments about it. And the hair and makeup on them was so cool, and like the CGI in those scenes looks so real as well, which was, yeah. I feel like the show just looks like a whole new show, but it doesn't feel like a whole new show, if that makes sense. And I noticed as they start running up this hill, I never noticed this before, but when I was like, I had to go back and watch this episode to write these notes down for this episode of the podcast. And I noticed there's a scene where Tyson is running in front of Percy, and Daniel accidentally kicks dirt in Walker's mouth, and you can see it. And I thought it was so funny, and I was like, oh my god. And then I was watching an interview where Walker was like, yeah, that did actually happen, and they left it in the show. I was like, that's so funny. I was like, I'm glad they put it in there because it just shows how real it is. And obviously, like certain things like that happen by accident actually add more into the show, which I'm glad that they left that in, basically. And then eventually Tyson saves Percy from a fireball. You know what? He's so brave, and he shows so much loyalty to Percy and so much love for Percy, even though Percy's not the most accepting to him at this point. Like he still views him as like his family, and he still will do anything to protect him, which is probably one of the reasons why I love Tyson so much. Anyway, what else? Oh yeah, and then they realize that Tyson obviously can't cross the border because he's a monster. Poor thing. And of course, Percy, his fatal flaw comes out a lot this season, and his loyalty towards the people that he cares about. He runs through the barrier to try and save him. And like if you don't know what Percy's fatal flaw is, maybe this scene isn't as symbolic for you. But if you know about his fatal flaw, like I'm glad that the show sort of show us what it is instead of like explicitly saying it until further on this season, which I think is like the writing for this show is always very clever, and that's what I loved about the books as well. Like there's a lot of things that happen that don't necessarily get explicitly said, but if you read like between the lines you can see what's kind of going on, and I love that the show allows me to do that as well. um and eventually obviously Annabeth can see how much Tyson means to Percy, and she takes the force from the barrier, and she gives him permission to enter camp. And I feel like this is a huge moment for her, and a lot of people didn't realize how big of a moment this was for her. Like she doesn't trust Cyclopses. I'm sorry, I'm gonna spoil it now. She doesn't trust Cyclopses because of something that's happened when she was younger. And I love that in this moment, like it shows how mature she's become. She is able to look past that fear and that distrust to save someone. And you know what? I didn't think that she got as much credit from people about what she did. And I was looking at that scene, and like as someone whose favorite character is Annabeth, like just seeing her growth from season 1 to season 2 is so big. Like you can tell she's learned so much by being out in the world, and this was one moment of hers, like probably a really proud character moment for her. And honestly, like I stood there for like a few minutes and was just like, wow, like no one could be prouder than me in that moment for seeing her doing whatever it takes to save the people that she cares about. Like, obviously, she knew that Percy would be in danger by going to try and save Tyson, so she tries to save both of them, which is like amazing for her. I'm really proud of her. Anyway, the Laestrygonian manages to get through the border, and Percy and Annabeth are ready to attack it together. But then he gets impaled with a spear. Does anybody know who it is? Instantly, as soon as I saw that, I was like, "Oh my god, it's Clarice!" I was like, "It's Clarice! Who else is it gonna be?" And obviously, it's Clarice. And Dior's aura this season is insane. When she comes on that screen, she owns the screen, and like yeah, season two is her season. Like this is her quest, and it's her season. And Dior has done such a good job of bringing that aura. I feel like she doesn't have to try, which is great. Like she has a great screen presence, and Percy decides that now is a good idea to mention the spear that he snapped the last time he was at camp. And you know what? I just hit my head. I was like, no, now is not the time. She's literally just saved your life, Percy. Like you can't sort of be bringing that up. You can't bring a sensitive subject up right now. But yeah, it's nice to see that they've kept that Persassy element in Percy because it's such a central part of who his character is. Like, I would hate to find out that they'd cut like stuff like that out, but I'm glad we get to see a little bit of that now. And obviously, not Percy, Clarice is angry at them because obviously she's supposed to be patrolling the borders at the minute because apparently Camp has been getting a lot of attacks. And Annabeth and Percy realize that, this wasn't some random attack. Like, Laestrygonians are like cannibals from the north. Like, they don't just appear out of nowhere. And Annabeth realizes that actually this is a distraction. They're testing the barriers at the back of the camp while something else is going on. And, Percy thinks that it's Percy mentioned Thalia's tree, and all of a sudden, like it became obvious to me. I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "Someone's attacking Thalia's tree," and that's where the scene cuts off. So, the next scene is Thalia's tree, obviously, and we see Luke poisoning Thalia's tree. That scene, honestly, watching Charlie stab Backbiter through Thalia's tree, I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, you know, I saw a different side to Luke. Like, obviously, a lot of last season, he was pretending to be the nice guy. So, and he had a lot of people fooled. Believe me, he had my best friend fooled. He was like, no, he's a good guy. Like, he couldn't do anything wrong. And, like, my side eye was like, you're going to have the shock of your life when you get to the end of the book. And, this is the first time we get to see Blackjack as well, which I thought was so cool. We saw him a little glimpse of him in season one. Percy saw him at the top of his school roof. But yeah, it was just like we get to obviously peel back that storyline with Blackjack as well. But that's more for the later books. And you know what? When Charlie was doing it, well, not Charlie, Luke, saw in his eyes just for a second, like a little split second of regret in his eyes. Charlie is such a brilliant actor, but one of the things I admire most about him is the way he uses his eyes. He conveys so much emotion through his eyes. I saw the regret in his face. Please don't get me wrong. I saw it. I knew that he regretted what he did. But it was another thing which is like it gives you a little bit of hope, the same way like Annabeth can see it. Is like you feel like there's still some good left in him. Like I don't think he's completely gone yet. Not yet in the story yet. But obviously, by him doing this, like I feel like he's trying to prove it to himself more than anyone else that he is ready to end this era of the gods. But it's like I think the fact that he had to kill a friend, someone who he looked after and believed in, like I think that kind of I think it was harder for him than he thought it was going to be. Yeah, but like I said, Charlie's acting on this point it was like on point. Like this particular scene was I think such a pivotal moment in Luke's character development. And honestly, there's a bit where Percy goes, "Luke, you're running again." Like, and this is the angriest I've ever seen Percy. Like, I've never seen that before. He looks like he's ready to throw hands with Luke. And you know what? I know that when they cross paths again this time, this season, it will be completely different. Because obviously, the last time Percy saw Luke in this point in the story was after Luke had betrayed them. Luke had tried to kill him, and Annabeth came to save Percy just in time. So I know that Percy is on the other side, which is like, Luke is bad. He needs to die. He's trying to destroy the world. So, I can see it from Percy's point of view. But obviously, Annabeth as a sibling, I know that she's going to find it a little bit harder to accept, which comes across a lot this season. But like I said, we can't talk about that until we get there. And the scene where Annabeth realizes that Luke has poisoned Thalia's tree using elder python venom, you know, like she looks so distraught. She's like, "Oh my god, like how could he do this? Like Thalia saved both of our lives. Like this is betrayal in her eyes. Like more than seeing him confess to wanting to destroy the gods, I think this hit her harder because it was like, oh my god, he poisoned my sister. Like he's trying to kill my sister to get his way. Do you know what I mean? And then, Tyson obviously doesn't know what's going on, bless his heart. Like, he has no idea what's going on. And Percy so sweetly explains to him what happened to Thalia. And, the way he's looking at Annabeth, oh my God. I was like, she's like, you know what I was thinking in my head? I was like, Percy, now is not the time to be admiring her. Like, she's literally watching her sister die. And, like, you admiring her probably isn't helping the situation. But yeah, he's the king of yearning. I don't think anybody can yearn as good as Percy does. And a lot of it is like Annabeth just can't comprehend what she's seen. Like she just can't understand why Luke would do something like this. And Percy explains to her that like Luke is gone. Like that's literally what he says to her. He's gone. And I think this like I knew from this episode that this like love that she has for Luke is going to cause a lot of problems between her and Percy, particularly in this season. I like that aspect of the book. I like in the book, obviously, it was like Annabeth had romantic feelings towards Luke. And that caused so many issues between her and Percy throughout the books. It's one thing that they always used to keep fighting over. And I'm glad that they've added that into the show as well. Like, even though there is such a big age gap, I'm glad that that aspect has been put in. And I know a lot of people like don't really like it, but yeah, I think the show is leaning towards the more sibling angle, which is the sibling love, which I think is the best way to take it in all honesty because of the age gap between the actors. But obviously she still loves Luke, and I think that that's something that Percy just can't comprehend. Okay, so obviously, now the scene sort of changes where Clarice and her army come marching back up to the hill where Thalia's tree is, and they've come to kill Tyson. And he's so cute. He just hides behind the tree, and because he's so big, you could just see him. It's so cute. And Tantalus appears, and it's like when he walks in. The first thing he says is, "Does camp still stand?" It is like a military. He has turned this camp and all the demigods into his own personal army. And Timothy Simmons honestly absolutely kills this role. I could not imagine someone better. Like again, we're talking about aura. His aura is just yeah, like when he walks in, like everybody turns to look at him. It's like, oh my god. It's like, who is this guy? Like I've never seen him before. He's very intimidating. Even I was a bit like watching it, I was like, oh, okay, this is a bit different. This is not really what I was expecting. Um, and obviously Tantalus demands that Tyson is killed, but luckily, trident appears above Tyson, and he is claimed by Poseidon as one of his sons. So then everybody realizes that actually he's Percy's brother, and Percy doesn't really I know in the books he's not very happy about it, but at that point, when I was watching Walker, like I couldn't really read his facial expression. I think he was shocked. I think he was upset, but he just has a bit of a blank face, so it's hard to read the emotions from that. But I'm just going off based on what I remember of Book Percy and how Book Percy felt in this moment, and I think like it was mostly shock. Okay, right. Let's move on to the next part. Okay, so once that scene is over, we move on to a scene in Dionysus's office. And honestly, Jason Mantzoukas, I was cracking up. He was crying with laughter in the shot, and he was just laughing. And like I felt bad because obviously he's laughing at the fact that Percy is Tyson's brother, and and he makes this joke, right? Which I didn't think they would ever put in a kids show. But I was like, I guess it's for the adults that watch the show. But he makes a joke about Poseidon not being able to keep his trident to himself. Like, I feel bad for laughing, but honestly, Jason's laugh was so contagious. Like, I was cracking up as well. Like, I felt bad for Percy, don't get me wrong, that he was being basically taken the mick out of, but I could not, like, with Jason, he just cracked me up. And then Annabeth and Percy find out that Tantalus is a new activities director because Chiron has been kicked out on the basis that he is a son of Kronos, which makes zero sense to me. And like Percy also says this because Zeus is a son of Kronos as well. Like the whole family is involved. Like how could he just get rid of Chiron purely on the soul basis that he is Cronus' son? Zeus is also Cronus' son. Like, and this is another thing. Like, I think that Luke gets angry about is like the double standards in the Greek family. That bit annoyed me as well because I was just like, that's so dumb. I was like, that's actually the stupidest reason to get rid of him, but whatever. Um, Percy is about to go off on one. Like he was ready to jump at Dionysus, but luckily Annabeth puts her hand on his arm, which shuts him up immediately. What a sim! Like and it's so like it's these little moments, like these little touches. Like I'm not like the kissing and things like that is like later on, but these little moments, like these little moments of intimacy is what I love about these two so much. And it's why like they're probably the only sort of romance that I don't feel cringy reading, because it's very slow. And just this one little scene was just like just Percabeth energy to me. And he immediately looks like he feels calmer in himself, which is just adorable. It just shows the impact that she has on him, which is very sweet. Um, Mr. D reveals that Tantalus is reintroducing the chariot races, which was so cool because I was like, that is the part of season 2 I wanted to see, because I was just like, I'm interested to see how these chariot races have been brought to life. I've heard the cast talk about them so much, so I was really excited to see like how they've managed to pull this out of the book. And you know what? When we talk about episode 2, which is like mostly about the chariot races, I I can't wait to talk more about that because it was so good. Um, and Percy and Annabeth, like they're demanding a quest to fix Thalia's tree. They were like, if the barrier comes down, like Cam's gonna be open to any attack. Like they can all die basically. But Tantalus won't authorize it, and Mr. D won't authorize it. He can care less, really. He's just an immortal being, isn't he? He's just really at camp because he's being punished. It's not like he really cares about any of the campers. And Percy gets all sassy, and you know what? I love his attitude in this scene. Like it was just, if there was a peak like per sassy scene, I think this would be the one to use because it is so funny the way he just says certain things. And um, Tantalus obviously doesn't like Percy, and he demands that he gets escorted to his cabin to be put into confinement for the whole summer, which I thought was a little bit harsh, but you know that's just the way things go, I suppose. So obviously now that Percy's been escorted back into his cabin, the next scene takes place in Poseidon's cabin. And as he's walking past, like everyone, like all the demigods are laughing at him. And I felt so bad because I was like, Tyson, although he looks scary, like he really isn't. Like he's such a lovely character. But I think it's that judgment. And I think like Percy at this moment feels like he's a bit of a joke. Like originally, like he was the forbidden child that saved Olympus, blah blah blah. But I feel like now he feels like his life and his existence is a bit of a joke because he's got a monster in inverted commas as a sibling. But I feel like he's going to come to realize the value of Tyson as the season goes on. Hint hint. Percy questions Tyson. He thinks that Tyson knew that Poseidon was his father, but in actual fact, I thought it was quite harsh. But I understand why he's upset. But at the same time, Percy can't blame Tyson. Like Tyson doesn't get to choose his parents. Like none of us get to choose our parents, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I thought it was a bit harsh of him to go off at Tyson like that because it's just like he didn't choose this. Like it just happened. Percy tells Tyson that they aren't bros. Honestly, I thought I was gonna cry. I was like, hating on him. I was like, he's so sweet. How could you hate on him? It's like, Tyson literally looks like he wouldn't hurt a fly. Like I couldn't imagine being awful to him. And Tyson just looks so sad, and I was just like, I just need to give him a hug because he's not getting the love he deserves, which I didn't like. And then Tyson says something. He's like, it means that I'm no longer alone. And I was just like, he's too pure to be in this messy world. Like he's so yeah. I don't know how to explain it, but Tyson, he really did touch my heart in this first episode. I was just like, I already love him and I already care so much about him. Um, and then, as they're talking, like, there's a knock at Percy's cabin door and it's Annabeth and she's asking Percy if he wants to talk. You know what? It was nice to see her make the first move. Like she realized, I think, that she was being a little bit guarded earlier, and now she's like trying to let her guard down and let Percy back in, like because she realizes that actually he does genuinely care about her. Like he doesn't want anything from her. He just cares about her well-being and if she's okay. And I think she's realized how much she's missed him after she's seen him for so long. And Percy says that he doesn't want to leave Tyson, and I saw like the hurt like that flashed across Annabeth's face. Like she was disappointed, but also I think that there was a hint of jealousy there as well. Like she's gone from having not having to share Percy with anyone to having to share him with Tyson. And I feel like that's not nice for anyone really. It's like she hasn't really got anyone left. Like obviously Thalia's dying, Luke is gone, like the person like Grover's gone. Percy's the only person left that she can trust and she can be her most authentic self with. And now obviously he's got other priorities. He's now got a brother that he has to look after, and I think there's a little bit of jealousy. I'm not saying that Annabeth's jealousy wasn't valid in that moment. I just feel like you know what? It's about growing up, right? She just hasn't hit that level of maturity yet to understand that okay, it doesn't mean that Percy hasn't got time for her. It's just that he has priorities temporarily elsewhere. But yeah, it was really sad to watch Leah's face at that moment. He does invite her into his cabin to talk. She refuses. Damn it! I was like, for God's sake! I was like, obviously she won't go in there because she doesn't want to. Cool. Can't remember the last thing I was talking about because I got interrupted. But I was just thinking, like, I've taken like when I was doing an analysis of this episode, like a lot of the things that I realised was like a lot of the Percabeth tension, at this point in time is because of a lack of communication. Like, yes, I know that Luke has something to do with it and Tyson has something to do with it, but I don't think that that's the central issue at the minute. I think the problem is that this time that they've spent apart, they've grown apart, which is normal. Like that's quite common for people anyway. Like when you spend a bit of time away from people, sometimes your thoughts and your feelings can be different. But I know that the show will put them back on track at the right time. But it's nice to show that everything isn't always hunky dory in relationships. Like relationships are tough. Like it's hard to make people happy. And especially when it's someone that you care about, when they do little things like that hurt you, it's hard to let those things go. And I think that's what is going on with Percy and Annabeth at the minute. Um, and they're both like in this moment in the scene, they're both annoyed at each other for not reaching out. And I think the reason why they're fighting is because they've missed each other. Like they've missed having someone to talk to, someone who understands the struggle. And um, I just don't think they know yet how to express those feelings to each other. And there's a bit where Percy says to her, in all these months, why didn't you reach out? You had at least 2 drachmas to try and iris message me, and you didn't. And she just simply says, she goes, "That's exactly what I'm trying to do right now." And that made my jaw drop because I think she has realized the value of Percy in her life. She can't do this life without him. She knows that. And I think being away from him for so long has shown her that as well. And the way she looks at him when she walks off, I was just like, you could see that Percy is like, damn it. He was like, for God's sake, I messed up. But you know what? That's okay. Like they're still young. They're not gonna be perfect at everything. No one is perfect at everything, particularly in relationships. I don't think anyone is perfect at anything. So I'm glad that the show is showing them through a more human side than just the demigod side, because that side is equally as valuable as the demigod side. At least I think so, anyway. Right. So after that happens, the next scene takes place in Poseidon's cabin, and Tyson finally tells us that a sphinx told him that his mom was a naiad. That's how he knows. So when he was homeless, he used to meet these people on the streets with him, and they told him about his mom. And when he talks about his story, it's so sad. And like, there's a bit where Tyson sort of flips over, and you can see the scratches on Tyson's back, and it shows how much he's been through to just survive. And I think Percy realizes at that moment that you know what, Tyson's been through a lot. So the least he can do is like look after him and make sure he never feels alone again. But yeah, so the next scene is Annabeth at Thalia's tree. And this is a beautiful scene, a perfectly acted scene. And like Annabeth is desperate. Like she's talking to Thalia's tree. She's like, give me a sign, show me you're still in there. And she goes, show me a way to fix you and I'll do it. And this is the first time I've seen her cry properly. And I feel like there's this feeling that she's failed Thalia, and like she couldn't protect her, she couldn't save her, she couldn't do what Thalia did for her all those years ago. And I'm glad that we get to see more of an insight into their relationship. Like there's a few flashbacks this season as well, which we can talk more about. And the main thing is like she's asking Dahlia, like, what can I do to fix you? And she just sort of sits by the tree most of the night and is just holding it. And just, it was just so sad to see her so vulnerable. Like, she's lost an unbelievable amount this season. And I don't think like anybody really gets it. Like they don't really understand like the gravity of the situation that she's in. Like things are difficult with Percy. Luke has gone off, Dahlia's dying, Grover's not here. She's now having to adjust to a Cyclops being around her all the time. Like it's all a lot for her. And I'm glad that the show has shown her in a more vulnerable light this season. Okay, so then the next scene goes back to Percy, and it's a dream, and he's inside this Cyclops cave, and he can hear Grover calling out to him. And I love this scene because it's like they swap clothes, and Grover's saying that he's established like an empathy link with him so that they can communicate to each other through the dreams, which is quite cool. And this is the first time we get to see them back together after so long, which is such a lovely scene. And it's so nice to see the two of them back together again. And Grover tells Percy about Polyphemus and the Sea of Monsters and the fact that the Luke's team is looking for the Golden Fleece as well, even though Percy doesn't yet know what the Golden Fleece is. Grover tells Percy that he needs to come and find him, and he gives him the numbers 30, 31, 75, 12. So the same numbers that the Grey Sisters gave him. So they were telling Percy the truth, they just couldn't tell him what those numbers meant. Percy falls out of the bed again when the dream ends. Honestly, this guy's going to give himself some next level brain damage. The amount that he keeps face planting the floor. Honestly, I hope Walker has still got some brain cells left after the amount that he's had to fall on the floor for this show is crazy. Percy realizes that those numbers are coordinates to the Sea of Monsters. There's a map in the Poseidon cabin that tells him that where the Sea of Monsters is, and he marches up to Annabeth and Dahlia's tree, and he tells her that he's got a way to save Thalia, and that's where the episode ends. So now we're going to sort of wrap this up because I've been talking for such a long period of time. Oh my god, nearly an hour. Okay, let me wrap this up really fast, and we're just sort of going to come to my final like thoughts and feelings. First of all, what an amazing first episode. You could tell the production this time around this season has gotten a lot bigger, a lot larger. They're aiming for the stars now, and I love that. I love that they've invested the money into this show because it is such a great story, and I hope we get to see it all the way through to the last book. Percabeth is Percabething, even though there's a bit of tension there, but I'm really excited to see what they do with the siren scene. Like that is my favourite scene in book two, so I really hope like I can feel like just as good as I did when I read the books. I like I said, I like the changes they made from the book. I have no personal complaints whatsoever. I think they've done a great job with the stuff that they've changed. And we got our first glimpse of Alison, which I thought was quite cool. I want to see more of her deal. Why she chosen to side with Luke, no idea. What she got against her dad, no idea. But I hope we get an answer to that question. The Grey sisters were great. They were so good. They were amazing additions to the cast, and their scenes were probably one of my favorites. Tyson is also the sweetest. I hope we get to see more and more of him this season. And I'm really happy that they've chose Daniel. Daniel is incredible, and I just love him. I think he's great. And yeah, overall, I'm really happy with the way they've taken this season, and I think it's been worth the wait. It's been worth waiting 2 years for it. I'm happy with that. I am happy to wait longer if I need to for Titan's Curse. But yeah, it was amazing. They've done such a good job, and they're on the right track so far. So I hope they continue to stay there. 2 more episodes till the finale. Um, and I'm quite nervous, but we'll see how it plays out. But other than that, I'm just genuinely very excited. So thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's such a long episode. I'm so glad. But at least this makes waiting for 3 months worth it. And yeah, like I said, like, subscribe, share. I'm on Spotify. I'm on YouTube. Just find me wherever. Um, and I will be speaking to you guys soon with the episode review of episode 2.